And the sofa guest today, there are lots of ways you could describe him. Maybe a techie, a technophile, techno junkie, a geek, maybe. I think he prefers Gadget Man, though, so we'll stick with that. You might recognise Matt Porter as the resident technology expert from Mark Murphy's programme. He not only makes a living as a web designer, but also by reviewing gadgets. It's a dream for a lot of people, that job. And most recently, Matt's travelled the length of the country in an electric car. Well, was it just to prove that you can, Matt?
It was, the idea was to prove to cynics,
right,
people that weren't kind of aware of what electric cars could do in this day and age, to prove to them that it was a practical alternative to petrol and diesel, that you could go, obviously we can go up backwards and forwards to the shops and things like that, but actually travelling to a remote destination, which is what we kind of ended up doing, and back again. Now,
you can call me a fool, but please don't. Because I was talking to Matt earlier, the other Matt Marvel, who has also apparently just got an electric car, and I didn't realise. I thought they were all hybrids. So I thought if you ran out, if you ran out of charge on your battery, you could just put some petrol or diesel in it. But no, they're not. They're solely.
Yes, that's right.
You charge them up.
That's right. Electric cars are solely powered by batteries of varying sizes, with motors of varying sizes. Some electric cars have what's called range extenders on them, right, which is like a little generator that sits in the back quietly, and if you need additional electricity to get you further, you can charge the battery that way. Some of them are hybrids, which means that they either have a petrol or diesel engine as well as electric. But in this case, it was a pure electric car.
And so now the point of your journey sort of makes more sense to me, because I would be terrified of running out of charge, and kind of that's what you were doing, wasn't it? Dispelling the myth.
Yeah, what happens is with these cars is that they have, when you charge them up, they can give you an idea of how much range you should expect for that charge. And in the case of the car I was driving, it was 300 miles.
Right.
Which meant that, okay, I can go 300 miles and everything will be fine, and I'll charge up after that. But actually there are a number of other issues that occur. Firstly, you've got to get to where you want to start, and you've got to then, when you get to your destination, you've got to have enough energy to get to somewhere else to charge. So there are a lot of other things you have to think of as well. So, for instance, we were driving from Ness Point to Ardnamurchan in Scotland, which is the most easterly to the most westerly point of the UK, and back again. We had to get to Ness Point, and in fact, I had to charge up in Thetford, then drive from Thetford to Ipswich, and then from the next morning Ipswich to Ness Point, and then Ness Point we started the journey. By that point I kind of was down to 170 odd miles on the range, because the faster you, or the heavier you might be with the accelerator, the quicker it will obviously use up the electricity in the battery. So if you are kind of getting used to the car and driving it around, this is very good, because they're very quick at accelerating and all of those things. You do tend to use up more electricity. So when we left Ness Point, we were kind of half tank before we'd even started. And actually what happened is our first destination was meant to be Grantham, but the car itself diverted us and basically told us, I don't think you're going to get to Grantham on the amount of charge you've got. So it started diverting us, and we ended up having to go back to Thetford and charge to 300 miles again in order to get going, to go to Grantham. So the car was telling us, it wasn't taking us, we still had to control it or drive it, or I had to drive it, but it still will, and it was being over cautious as well.
It's very, very intelligent stuff, though, isn't it, this?
Yeah, the whole route that we plotted, it's similar to it's Google Maps that they use as a basis, or Google Navigation, and we set the route. So I said I wanted to go from here to Ullswater, because we did it over 2 days going up there, and it decided the route, or it planned the route so that we could stop what called superchargers. So charging a car battery up takes an awful lot of time unless you have a super fast charger.
Right.
And the ones we use were called superchargers, which are specific for the car and meant that instead of waiting around for 3 or 4 hours to charge the battery, we could do it in under half an hour.
Right, okay.
But those superchargers are in different places around the country, so they're not the most direct route. We were having to go to somewhere like Thetford, Grantham, Sheffield, Gretna Green, and all of these other places, because that's where they had them. If we'd have not used those, we would have been hanging around for a lot longer. And it turned out, actually, when we got to Scotland, we kind of went out of that network, and we were then onto what's called rapid chargers, which would work perfectly great with cars like the one that Matt's bought, because he's got quite a smaller battery. But even then, you're still waiting quite a bit of time on the car we were using. So, but we were just topping up really at that point, just to get us to the next destination rather than hang around. We did tend to hang around for a long time in Glencoe ski resort, waiting for a car to charge, and there wasn't details on the machine, on the charger. We couldn't work out how to enable it, and there was all kinds of stress there. But that was kind of once we got out of the sort of rapid supercharge network, once we got onto the Charge Scotland, actually, the government's Scottish government's scheme. We had trouble actually enabling one machine, and the other one stopped charging after 7 minutes. So yes, that was a bit stressful.
So, what were the kind of, was that the most stressful part of the journey, or otherwise was it pretty much plain sailing?
It's like a long journey like that. We came across all the normal issues you'd have, which is traffic jams and all of those things. It would divert us around traffic jams. We diverted around one enormous queue of traffic, which was I can't remember what it was, on the A1, and that put a lot of miles on. And of course, then you're starting to eat into your range.
Say, what happens if you get stuck in a massive traffic jam for sort of, if 5 hours?
If you're just, actually, when you're sitting in a traffic jam, you're using no energy at all, other than for the air conditioning or the radio, because it's only when you're moving does the electric motor is being used. So they literally do nothing whilst they're sitting there. So that kind of thing probably isn't going to use a great deal of energy anyway. But it's about how much time you're sitting behind the car. So we were diverting. We were fortunate that we were able to stop at another charge point near Penrith, which had only opened 2 days before, and we could stop there and charge up. So we were kind of lucky. This was all what's called range anxiety, where everyone panics that they're not going to be able to get to places because the car can't take it. And this was meant to dispel it. In fact, we did kind of start getting it once we were in the sort of back end of Scotland, where we were reliant on a network or equipment that didn't seem to want to play ball sometimes.
And otherwise, did you find that it performed as a normal vehicle?
Yeah, again, because it was a press vehicle, certain functions of it were disabled.
Right.
And there's a function on it which is not autonomous, but kind of a few steps away from autonomous, where it will actually keep you in lane, keep you away from other vehicles. It will stop if there's an accident. It will avoid potential accidents and kind of things like that. That was all switched off. If that had been switched on, we would have been even better off, because the car would have managed the accelerator and all of those things on motorway travel, and then we would have probably used less energy up. So it was actually really comfortable to drive. I didn't feel tired when I got out. I didn't feel stiff. It was actually a really comfortable trip. The only stressful thing really was getting places. We were delayed. When you go to Scotland, it's just enormously spectacular place to be, and you just want to keep stopping and taking pictures, and it's awe-inspiring. So that's the kind of things that were delaying us, were the stopping and looking around, rather than just blindly driving through.
So why did you do this on your own, or were you?
I was originally going to do this with my dad. Okay, so I came up with the idea of doing this as a kind of challenge, going from east to west and back again, purely because I live in the east, so it made sense to come back.
Yeah.
And then my wife Vanessa came up with the idea of taking my dad as coming along as company.
Right.
And that's what the plan was. Unfortunately, about 2 weeks before we were due to go, my dad's brother died, my uncle died, and my dad didn't feel he was up to coming along again. And luckily, my best friend of 45 years, Andy, stepped in and said, yeah, I'll come as well, I'll come instead. So it ended up with me and him going.
And how long did it take you, the trip?
It was 4 days, so it's 2 days there and 2 days back.
And are you and Andy still best friends?
Yeah, we are, and that's
Good.
surprising. Yeah, I think he was getting a little bit fed up with me getting stressed in Glencoe, but he was very good at walking off and leaving me to it.
Very good. And sort of, are you glad you did it? What have you sort of taken from the trip?
I was really glad I did it. I mean, I wanted to take loads of technology with me, which I did. So I took cameras and phones, and we live streamed tons of the thing. You know, we were driving through Glencoe with all the amazing mountains and live streaming on Facebook. I was given a drone to test for the journey, so I took that with me and flew that around the locks and got some nice footage. We were given data by a large mobile phone company, so we didn't have to worry about exhausting data. We were given lots and lots of things. We were let down by a few companies as well. Lots of people promised us stuff and it never actually transpired. But on the whole, it went really, really well and kind of to plan. It was a lot of management going on there of making sure phones were live streaming when they should be, and making sure we were careful what we said when they were live streaming. And stuff like that.
So it was basically a trip in a massive gadget with a selection of smaller gadgets.
We had all kinds of things, yeah.
How exciting. I want to know much more about what you do, because this would be, your job would be a dream job for lots of people. Lots of people absolutely love gadgets. So we're going to explore that and chat a bit more. We've also got the key questions. I don't know if you've heard of these before, but basically, hang on. It's a biscuit tin full of random questions on keys.
Okay.
Hence the key bit of the key questions. So you need to pick one, read it out. I hope it's been kind to you, and just...
How do you get your music on CD or download or vinyl? Well, actually, I pay 2 different music streaming companies. So I can listen to on my car, my little... smart car that I've got outside. I've got a Bluetooth. I haven't actually got a CD player or anything on there. Everything I listen to is streamed, so I listen to any music, anything I want to listen to, I can just select there, and at home as well. So yeah, I don't actually use CDs or anything like that anymore. It's all streamed over the air.
We should have known. We should have known, really, shouldn't we? So my sofa guest this afternoon is the Gadget Man, Matt Porter, who you may know from Mark Murphy's programme. I think you've helped out as the resident technology expert, is that right?
I have, yeah. I've done a few reviews on technology and apps as well. We used to do phone apps a few years
of
back.
course, yeah. And you've just come back from a trip from the most easterly to the most westerly points of the country in an electric car. That's right,
yes.
And a big success it was.
It was a big success, yes. We got back in one piece, which was a good start, yeah.
And you didn't at any point get a flat battery? Completely
Nothing.
Flat?
No, the furthest, the closest we got was, it said we had 35 miles range left.
Right.
And at that point we were 2 miles or a mile or something from Glencoe. So we had plenty, we were okay. We weren't in any danger of running out.
I've got a feeling that in years to come we're all going to be driving electric cars, aren't we?
We are, yeah.
And we're all going to be doing what we do now when we go past the petrol station, which is think, can we make it to the next one before we have to fill up? We'll be doing that with electric cars.
The thing with an electric car is you'll have your petrol station at home, because you will come home from work and you'll plug the car in and forget about it while you go to bed, and it will be charging overnight. And even if you don't live somewhere with a driveway that you can put a charge point, they'll have charge points on lampposts and things like that. So even if you live in a flat, you'll still be able to pull up and plug yourself into a lamppost and charge your car. It's kind of inevitable. There's no argument that everything will have to go to electric. So
It sounds like a long way off, but I'll think back on this
20
conversation
years.
in years to come and think, oh, he was right. Now, one of the things, you took a number of bits of new technology with you on your trip, one of which was this drone,
Yes.
which you bought in, and I'm holding now. It's the first time I've seen a drone close up.
Yeah, this is a very unique drone because it's foldable. Most drones aren't. But they've now started bringing in these foldable drones, so it makes it very small. Once it's folded up, it can actually fit in your pocket. And the idea is, if you're going hiking or somewhere like that, you're not having to carry a big backpack with a big drone in it. You literally can set those up in a couple of minutes and they're ready to fly.
It looks a bit like my brother's Millennium Falcon did back in the day.
Yeah, they are quite space age, aren't they?
With a little camera at the front. So it's remote controlled. How easy is it to fly?
You have an app on your phone which provides you with the camera view, if you like, the heads-up display. Or first-person display of what's going on. You plug your phone into the controller holds onto it. You switch it on, they link up together, and literally it's very intuitive, that drone, and more so it's incredibly stable. It was peculiar in its stability, because it would take off and sit in the air 20 feet up, and it would almost feel like it was stuck in a block of ice. It was so stable.
Really?
So it uses GPS, satellite technology to stabilise it, but also it's got a number of other cameras. It's got a couple of cameras underneath.
Oh, right.
Where your hand is. I think there's a
fingers
couple of
over the
little
lens,
cameras
probably.
there.
Yeah.
And what it does is those cameras look at the ground and work out and stabilise it on the how the ground looks. So it really does just stick in the air. It's quite incredible. That
It is absolutely amazing. You see, I'd love to have a go, but I know it would end in disaster.
It's got obstacle avoidance as well, that one, so it should stop you flying it into trees or into other objects. So safety wise, it's quite good, that actually.
I just know it would be user error. I know it would end badly. So I find it really interesting chatting to someone like yourself, because I'm a bit of a technophobe, really. So you're sort of like the complete opposite to me. I don't know why. If I pick something, I mean, I think everything's amazing, like the drone, for example. It's incredible, but I know it would end badly if I tried flying it around. And it's like anything else, new technology. If I don't pick it up instantly and get it, then I think, well, stick with what you know.
And I think that's the key to technology now, especially with gadgets, is that the ones that we're all aware of now, the ones we all work with, are the ones that are the most intuitive, the easiest, so you can just pick them up and use them. It's no point being complicated and having buttons to do this, to do that, because that's not intuitive and people get bored very quickly. So we are now living in a kind of world where I think the companies that make them have kind of got that now.
Yeah.
They understand that you have to be intuitive in order to appeal to a mass market. So we're quite lucky.
So take me back then. When did you first become obsessed with gadgets?
Well, I think when I've thought about this a little bit, where I kind of became, I think it was really, I was lucky, because in the 80s, 70s and 80s when I grew up, Thursday night was always a big night, so there would always be Top of the Pops, but before that would always be Tomorrow's World.
Right.
So you'd always have Tomorrow's World and Top of the Pops, and I always thought Tomorrow's World was really kind of intriguing, because it really was showing you things that have developed into normal day-to-day. So I think back then I was watching Tomorrow's World thinking, that looks quite cool. That would be brilliant. And I remember watching one where they were sending email for the first time, and the amount of rigmarole that was required to send this email from one person to another. Of course, we don't even think twice now.
No.
There's so many different ways of communicating now that sometimes people will be communicating with me at WhatsApp. And I think, well, I don't use WhatsApp. So I think back in the 70s and 80s, it was from watching things like Tomorrow's World and that kind of thing, and Horizon and that sort of program. Probably the sort of thing that a lot of people wouldn't watch, but you kind of watched it because Top of the Pops was coming. Yeah.
So what about then? If you say you're a teenager in the 80s, so do you remember like your favourite 80s gadget?
Yeah, we weren't. Now we live in an era of opulence, don't we? The
Yeah.
things are really accessible. Back when I was a kid, things were expensive in comparison to now, and it was a big ask to get things. So when I was growing up, there were things like the Atari games consoles had first come out, and they were quite expensive, and the home computer market really burst into life in the early 80s in the UK. And so my first kind of big gadget was a Commodore VIC-20 computer, which was one of the first colour home computers that you could buy. So I used to spend hours programming in. You used to be able to buy computer magazines, and they'd have listings of programs in there, and you'd sit there typing up these listings onto your computer and then clicking or typing run at the end, and it would do something. It'd be a game or something like that.
Wow.
And at the time, I didn't even have a tape drive to save my work, so I'd literally switch the computer on, type this listing in, try and understand what it was doing to a certain extent, and then at the end of the day, when it's time for me to go to bed, I'd have to turn it off, and that would be gone forever and ever. Yeah. So now again, we don't have a problem with storage and stuff like that, but back then that was an add-on, a tape. It was a cassette drive, which was another 180 quid or something that I didn't have for a while.
So how did it develop then? Your sort of love of gadgets.
So I think it was. We were quite lucky again, because we're in an era where we've got this enormously fast-moving technology industry going, that we're just being fed new stuff. It's quite mind-numbing, really. And I think that the fact that I've seen new things develop and I've wanted to get my hands on them, and to be fair, I think that was what the thing that made me want to start doing this gadget review was, because I was, rather than wait for my phone to come up for renewal and then get a new contract and get a new phone and then discover 6 weeks later that actually it's not an awful lot better than the last one, I could think, well, if I start reviewing these gadgets, people are going to be able to lend me them or give me them, and I can then look at them and I can make that decision and then say, do you know what, I've got that out of my system. That was really clever, and there was a couple of little really clever things on that gadget, but actually I'm kind of finished with it now, and it can go back, and I'm done. So that's quite a nice thing, is being able to do that, is actually being able to send stuff back, because generally it's only lent to you for a short amount of time and you have to send it back, or they collect it anyway.
So how easy is it to convince people, the manufacturers and people, to lend you stuff to
quite
talk
difficult
about? Is it?
Yeah. In the first instance, when I was doing a app of the week slot with Mark Murphy a few years ago, and we'd done it for about a year or whatever, and I was thinking, no, it'd be nice to have something different. So I actually started looking into getting technology to have a look, and it's actually quite difficult, because you have to justify why you want it. You have to justify, someone's giving you something that's going to be expensive. In some, the car I took to Scotland's 100 grand. It's quite a big ask to get someone to let you have that for 4 days. So you have to justify what are you going to do with it? Are you going to write a review about it? Are you going to blog about it? If you're going to blog about it, how many people are likely to read it? If you're on the radio, how many people might listen to it? And all of those kind of things. So you have to justify that, and of course you have to then find where to get these technology from, because I very quickly learned that you don't go to Sony or Samsung to get a Sony or Samsung phone. Yeah. Because they'll just refer you to their press offices. Or a press, those kind of things. So, or PR companies. So you then have to try and find the PR company that looks after the brand and that kind of thing, and you can sometimes get caught up in an email trail that goes nowhere, and you actually get absolutely nowhere. So it is actually quite difficult. Funnily enough, the motor vehicle side of it, because I reviewed about 14 different electric and hybrid cars over a period, that was a lot easier, because there's a dedicated PR website for the motor industry that once you know it's there, you just log on and say, oh, there's the brand, and they give you the press office number, and you'll find the press fleet coordinator and all of those things. None of this I knew at the beginning, so it was really quite difficult. It might not have looked at it on the outside, but certainly it's a struggle, and some companies just simply won't give you anything. There are certain big tech companies that won't actually lend you a thing.
Really?
Yeah.
So if we came to the Porter household, is everything sort of, like, is the TV the all singing, all dance? Do you have to have everything,
No.
top spec gadgets?
No.
No.
I certainly wouldn't do that because, like I said, I get the opportunity to try stuff out, and sometimes, like I say, you've done that and it's finished and you've got it out of your system, if you know what I mean. So generally I'll find something that will do the job. Maybe it's not the top of the range and things like that, but it will do the job. We have got a robot vacuum cleaner, and which basically was given to me to review, and they never asked for it back. And that was and that still is an absolutely fabulous gadget. We still use it because it is so good. Not all robot vacuum cleaners are good, but this particular model was particularly good and continues to be.
So you sit with your feet up and it goes around the house clearing up.
Yeah, the thing is, like,
you.
you switch it on and say do it every day at 2:30. Do the carpets, and it will do the downstairs carpets, because it's only sort of doing it every day. It doesn't have to do a full clean. So
that is the sort of gadget I would expect to find in your house. That's very exciting. We're going to talk more, because I know your travels have taken you your job's taken you all over the world, so we'll speak about your travels. Also, I want to know how the rest of the family feel about this gadget fetish. So it's that time of the day, the sofa interview time. Always, even. I haven't been drinking, it's fine. Time always gets away with us, you see, during this feature, because we've talked to such interesting people. So we've got a lot to get through in the next few minutes, Matt, but you must answer a key question.
Another key question.
Yes, this is Matt Porter, Gadget Man.
Okay.
And his key question is...
if you could stay at a certain age forever, which would it be? Oh my goodness.
That's a toughie, actually, that one.
It is very difficult. My life's hard now in some ways and difficult for everybody. But I think probably if I had to, I probably would be this age. I think so that I could still keep living the way things are now, although they're challenging and lots of things go on at home and stuff like that. It's still a great time, so I think 48 would be good.
Very
there
good.
We go.
That's nice. That's refreshing to hear. We're talking about life at home, and it seems very apt that you met your wife online.
I did.
You? Yes,
right. This is, I can't remember how many years ago it would be, 15 years ago, but I was a member of an online dating website, which is actually gone now. It's long disappeared. But it did its job.
It wasn't anything to do with you, I don't think,
It did its
Matt.
job. But yes, I met Vanessa online some 15 or so years ago, and we chatted for quite a long while online to each other and got to know each other that way, and obviously finally met up and obviously fell in love so deeply that I sold my house in Bedfordshire where I lived and moved up here and started the business and moved in with Vanessa and started our life together. It was all, I don't do things by half.
No, because the two of you run a web design business, don't you?
We do, yeah. We started a web design business. Well, I started it myself shortly after I moved up here. I lived in a little house in Ipswich in Rectory Road and had it in sort of like the downstairs there.
Yeah.
But it was just me, and then we turned into a limited company, I think, in 2006, and have been since. And Vanessa is a director, and I'm a director, and we work together as best we can. Between having twins and things like that.
Oh wow! So working together and living together, and twins.
Yeah, we had twins 7 years ago, James and Grace. Wasn't expected, it wasn't planned, but we've dealt with it since. So that obviously caused a little bit of an issue with regards to work.
Yeah.
Vanessa, because they were twins, and they actually, I think they were £6.10 each when they were born.
Wow.
So it was quite a large pregnancy.
Yeah.
Vanessa found it quite difficult. So obviously wasn't working when she was pregnant. And then when they were born, I actually went back home and worked from home, and then I had to leave and go back to an office again because I was too busy cuddling twins, cuddling cute little babies, and not enough time working. So I ended up going back to an office again, and then when the twins got a bit older and they started going to nursery and things like that, and Vanessa was working, she was still continued to work. She was still doing bits and pieces, quite a lot actually. Even when the twins were babies, she'd work from home, and she kind of works from home mainly now. So we're not working under each other's noses. I'm normally in the office and she'll be at home, so it's not too bad.
Is she as gadget mad as you are? Or?
No, she's not gadget mad. No, she's not terribly interested in things like that, and that's not a bad thing, really, because it keeps me grounded.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think we could have a house that was something out of some
sci-fi
film. Yeah, it's like Blade Runner or something. So no, she's not terribly interested. She's got a smartphone. Eventually, she got herself a smartphone, but other than that, she's not terribly interested.
Hey, but with twins, I bet that robot vacuum cleaner's an absolute godsend.
We used to joke that it was actually following James around because he's particularly messy. He has autism and he likes to break up things, like biscuits and stuff like that. So we always used to joke that it was actually following him around, cleaning up after him.
Wonderful. And I know your job has taken you sort of all over the world. How did you end up stranded in an airport in Tunisia?
That was. I was my first marriage. I had the decree absolute came through, and I took a week off work to kind of, as a kind of right. It's all finished. Yeah. Now I need to think about moving on in life. Yeah. So I took a week off work. I stayed at home for the first couple of days, and then thought, what am I doing? I've taken a week off work. I'm just sitting here. So I went into Hitchin town. I lived in Hitchin at the time. Went to a travel agent and said, what have you got flying out today? And they said, and I was thinking Ibiza, Mallorca, somewhere like that.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, Tunisia. I went, oh right, what's that like? Yes, fine.
Yeah.
I said, really? Yes, fine. It's just backpackers' paradise, Tunisia. I said, well, I better go then. I said, but it's flight only, but you'll be all right. You'll be able to get something when you get there. All right, okay then. So it was actually 1996. This was because it was the night that England played Germany and lost on penalties. Okay. Because it actually delayed all the flights going out of Gatwick. So I got a lift to Gatwick and got on the plane, watched the football. Then got on the plane. I arrived at Tunisia, at Monastir Airport in Tunisia, and had no money because I'd taken traveller's checks with me. First thing I did was I went up to change my traveller's checks up, and they were told me they didn't take traveller's checks. No traveller's checks was the words I had from behind the counter. So I walked away again and sort of panicked a little bit and sat in the airport. And then at the time the travel agency bus arrived, and they told me that I could just get on that. It'd be no problem at all. And they said, no, you can't get on the bus. I said, well, I'm with Air Tours. No, you can't get on the bus. If we get stopped, we can go to prison for not having the right number of people on the bus. So within a few minutes, I was left in the airport on my own because everyone had gone. Yeah. A security guard was walking around with a big gun, and I was worried slightly because I had no money. And then I sort of heard this chap talking on the phone, and I realised he had a Scottish accent. So I went and grabbed him, and it turned out he was the airport manager. And I said, right, look, I've got a flight only here, and I'm a bit stranded. And he said, you shouldn't have got a flight only here. I said, well, I have done. He said, the best thing you can do is get on a plane and go back home. He said, because you're going to put yourself in a lot of bother. But I talked him into letting me stay, and he then booked me into a hotel for a couple of nights in Sousse. And
someone took you under their wing, didn't they?
Well, that's right. Everyone seems to want to haggle there, or did that back then, and I just wanted to get out of the airport. But this chap was arguing with a taxi driver and everything, and I just said, look, I'll pay. So we got in the cab, and the cab was an old Austin Cambridge, and you could see the floor through it and everything, and I was thinking, this is all a bit dodgy. Anyway, I finally got to Sousse, and I noticed a lady sitting by the pool a couple of days later that was reading an English book. So I went and bothered her and said, look, I'm stranded, I don't know what to do. And she took me under her wing for a couple of days, took me off and showed me around the sites and everything, and sort of rescued me. Aww. And then that was it. We parted ways, and I never saw her or heard from her again.
And the moral of the story is don't buy a flight-only ticket.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
Matt, we're running out of time. We've got to get to our travel news. So if people want to find out more about you and your adventures, what's the best thing for them to do?
They can go, if they want to know about the trip to Scotland, they can go to eastwestroadtrip.co.uk. And if they want to find out about the gadgets, they can go to thegadgetman.org.uk.
And it's been fascinating. We could have done a couple of hours.